The Council's verdict. The Grand Hall of the Interstellar Council glittered with cold light. Dozens of alien delegations filled the chamber, their scales, fur, feathers, and metallic carapaces reflecting the glow of the suspended star orbs above. This was where civilizations were judged, catalogued, ranked, and filed into their rightful place in the galactic hierarchy. Today, it was humanity's turn. At the central podium, High Arbiter Velra, a serpentine being whose voice was smooth but dripping with disdain, unrolled the crystalline data scroll. Species, Homo sapiens. Homeworld, Earth. Status, pre-FTL until recent decades. Average lifespan, 78 years. Musculature, fragile. Bone density, weak. Technological development, primitive, reliant on combustion until less than a century ago. The Arbiter's golden eyes glowed as the hall resonated with murmurs. Many species present smirked, some chittered with amusement, others whispered dismissively. The verdict was obvious before it was spoken. Velra continued. After review of their physiology, culture, and military capability, the Council finds humanity inefficient. They lack natural defenses, possess only rudimentary weapons, and require environmental precision to survive. They are hereby classified as Tier 9, beneath even the grazers of Dravik 3. In short, the weakest known race in this galaxy. The declaration echoed like a hammer strike. From the human delegation's booth, Ambassador Sophia Reyes clenched her fists. She had expected condescension, but not such outright humiliation. With respect, High Arbiter, she began, forcing calm into her voice. Your assessment is incomplete. You've studied our biology, yes. But what of our adaptability? Our cultural dynamism? Our laughter rippled through the chamber. A Zeraxi delegate, its insectoid mandibles clacking, cut her off. Adaptability, cultural dynamism, words for weakness. A race that breaks easily invents excuses instead of strength. Another alien chimed in. This one a hulking Revan warrior. Your species has no fangs, no armor, no claws. Your weapons are scavenged copies of ours. You are prey pretending at being predator. Sophia bit back her anger. She wanted to shout about the wars humanity had survived, the hardships endured, the constant need to improvise against impossible odds. But the Council wasn't listening. To them, humans were an amusing curiosity, a footnote in the annals of galactic history. The Arbiter raised his coil-like body to full height. Ambassador, the Council has spoken. Your species is granted limited trade rights and will be monitored. No voting privileges. No military responsibilities. Be grateful you are permitted entry at all. The gavel struck, sealing the judgment. As the session adjourned, whispers trailed through the chamber. Weakest race. Soft-boned. Barely worth notice. Sophia walked out stiffly, her head high despite the flush of shame burning her cheeks. Back aboard her diplomatic vessel, she stared at Earth's blue hologram. How would she tell her people? How could she explain that the galaxy saw them as little more than fragile animals, tolerated but not respected? Yet, even as despair tugged at her, another thought stirred, one she did not voice. The Council measured strength in claws, in fleets, in brute force. They had no metric for imagination, for stubbornness, for the fire that had driven humanity from caves to cities, from sail ships to the stars in a fraction of galactic time. And out in the dark, whispers already spread of unrest. The Dominion, a ruthless militaristic coalition, was mobilizing. War was brewing. Perhaps, Sophia thought, the Council's judgment was not the end of humanity's story. Perhaps it was only the beginning. In a smoky chamber far from the Council's core, two alien observers spoke in hushed tones. One, a scholar of the Trellin, tapped his long fingers against a datapad. They call them weak. But I've seen them in their natural state. They climb mountains without wings. They cross oceans without gills. They fight one another endlessly, yet somehow thrive. Weak? I'm not so sure. His companion, an old merchant of the Ural, tilted his head. It matters little. The Council has passed its verdict. The Trellin's eyes glimmered. Perhaps. But if war truly comes, I suspect those soft-boned creatures will surprise us all. The first strike. The war did not begin with fanfare but with fire. The Dominion's fleets poured across the galactic rim like a storm of steel. Worlds that had not known invasion in 1,000 years were suddenly ablaze. Planets fell in days, their defenses shattered beneath relentless bombardment. Even veteran warrior species faltered. The Interstellar Council panicked. Emergency sessions ran for days, filled with frantic debates and desperate votes. The great powers pledged fleets, but their confidence was brittle. For all their arrogance, they had grown complacent, used to dominance and ceremony rather than true war. And humanity wasn't even invited to the table. On Earth, Ambassador Sophia Reyes stood in front of the United Earth Assembly, her voice steady though her heart trembled. The Council has dismissed us as irrelevant, she told the delegates, but the Dominion will not share that view. They are advancing along every frontier, and eventually they will find us. If we wait for the Council to protect us, we will ban. Some leaders scoffed. Others shifted uneasily. But the decision was taken. Preparations would be made, quietly, urgently. Humanity had always survived by expecting the worst. They did not have to wait long. The Dominion's vanguard arrived at Proxima Colony, humanity's proudest off-world settlement. A fleet of sleek warships descended, expecting an easy prize. The Dominion commander, Carth Vel, recorded his opening message with a snay. Humans of Proxima, you are classified as prey. Lay down your tools, surrender your resources, and you will be spared. The reply came not from diplomats but from miners. When Dominion troops landed, expecting terrified capitulation, they found explosives planted in tunnels, atmosphere processes sabotaged to release choking gas, and civilians wielding improvised weapons. Men and women who had never worn a uniform fought like cornered wolves. Vel's troops fell back in disarray, their orderly formations disrupted by chaos. Mines collapsed on them, corridors erupted with fire, and every shadow hit a human with nothing left to lose. By the time Vel ordered a retreat, he had lost nearly half his landing force. It was supposed to be a simple conquest. Instead, it became a scar on Dominion pride. News traveled fast. The Council dismissed it as an anomaly, a fluke of luck. But soldiers at the front lines whispered a different story. Humans fought differently. They adapted. They refused to die neatly. The next strike came at the Belt colonies. This time, Dominion ships bypassed diplomacy and opened fire immediately. Station defenses crumbled within minutes. Yet when boarding parties stormed the stations, they found entire decks depressurized, humans floating in ambush with scavenged Dominion rifles. One boarding craft was rammed deliberately by a mining skiff, tearing both apart in a blaze visible across the sector. Human casualties were staggering, but the Dominion suffered losses they could not explain. By all calculations, the humans should have folded. Instead, they bled their enemy, every scrap of ground paid for in bodies and fury. From orbit, Dominion commanders began to fear the statistics. Their projections had promised swift victories. Instead, they faced resistance more costly than entire campaigns against stronger species. Back on Earth, images of burning colonies and makeshift heroes spread like wildfire. Grief turned to rage. Rage turned to resolve. Factories shifted from consumer goods to weapons production. Engineers dissected captured Dominion tech and reassembled it in weeks. Young men and women volunteered for service in numbers unseen since Earth's bloodiest wars. Ambassador Reyes returned to the Council, demanding recognition. She was laughed out of the chamber. Your losses outweigh your victories, one delegate scoffed. You throw lives away like sand in a storm. Sophia's reply was cold. Yes, and still we fight. How many of your worlds surrendered without resistance? The silence that followed was answer enough. By the end of the season, human resistance had become a subject of grim fascination. Soldiers of other species spoke of humans with wary respect. Dominion commanders gave them a name whispered in mess halls and command decks alike, the Fireborn. Fragile, yes, but impossible to stamp out. In the quiet hours of night, as the Dominion planned their next offensive, one truth unsettled them. The weakest race did not fight like prey. They fought like survivors. And survivors, in war, were the most dangerous enemy of all. Humanity unleashed. The war that should have crushed humanity instead awakened it. On Earth and its scattered colonies, factories roared to life. Assembly lines that once produced luxury goods now churned out weapons. Captured Dominion rifles were reverse-engineered, stripped down, and reassembled with human modifications. Engineers laughed at the Council's assessments of their primitive technology as they welded alien alloys to human ingenuity. It was a process no other species could have matched. The Dominion had spent centuries perfecting their weapons. Humans hacked them apart in weeks and improved them. The first proof came at Vegas Station. Dominion fleets swept in with overwhelming firepower, confident of another pacification. Instead, they met swarms of jury-rigged drones, once mining bots, now bristling with explosives and guided by human operators with nerves of steel. The Dominion flagship was shredded in the opening minutes, its captain too stunned to comprehend that his warship had been undone by machines built to haul ore. When reinforcements finally secured the station, the humans were already gone, their survivors vanishing into asteroid fields and leaving behind wreckage that told a new story. The prey could bite. Reports reached the Council. Many dismissed them as embellishment. But those at the front lines could not ignore the shift. Dominion soldiers began speaking of humans in hushed voices, not as weaklings but as madmen. They fought while wounded, they laughed in the face of death, and they refused to surrender. In the mess halls of alien garrisons, a phrase began to spread: better to face the Revan berserkers than a human cornered. Council races scoffed at such rumors until a broadcast shattered their doubt. At the Battle of Aranis Belt, human captains pulled off a maneuver that defied all military logic. Outnumbered 3-1, they feigned retreat, scattering their small fleet into the asteroid field. The Dominion pursued eagerly, only to find themselves trapped in a web of mines and hidden railguns. Human pilots rammed damaged ships into Dominion cruisers, turning wrecks into guided missiles. When the dust cleared, the Dominion had lost half their fleet. Humanity had lost nearly all of theirs, but the survivors transmitted a defiant message across open channels. You may kill us, but you will never break us. The council chambers buzzed with disbelief. The Revan general who had once mocked humans slammed his claws against the floor. They are reckless fools. They throw themselves into fire without thought for survival. Ambassador Reyes, watching silently from her booth, spoke at last. No, they fight because survival is not enough. They fight because losing with honor is better than living as prey. Even some of her critics could not dismiss the evidence. For the first time, humanity was not simply tolerated, they were feared. Allies began to come quietly. Smaller species who had long suffered beneath Dominion raids sought out human fleets. They had seen enough to believe. The humans were dangerous in a way the Dominion had not prepared for. They joined not because humans were strong, but because humans made them believe victory was possible. On the front lines, the change was unmistakable. Mixed species crews found themselves following human officers whose chaotic strategies, ambushes, feints, desperate gambits, worked where traditional doctrine failed. Dominion forces, accustomed to predictable opponents, reeled under the relentless unpredictability. One Dominion commander described it in his report. They fight as though they have nothing to lose. They are not bound by logic or tradition. They weaponize desperation, and in doing so, they create terror. By the season's end, the Council could no longer deny the truth. Human fleets were not the largest, their ships not the strongest. But wherever they fought, the Dominion bled. The Council convened again, this time not to mock but to debate. Could humans be trusted with greater responsibility? Or were they too volatile, too uncontrollable? Ambassador Reyes stood once more before the assembly, her voice unwavering. You judged us the weakest. Perhaps you were right, by your measures. But your measures do not account for what we are. We are not the strongest. We are not the fastest. But we endure. And endurance, in war, outlasts strength. Her words lingered in the chamber long after she departed. Outside, on a dozen battlefronts, humanity prepared for the next strike. The galaxy had misjudged them. Now, The galaxy would learn what happened when the weakest refused to die. From weakest to fearsome, the war had dragged on for years. The Dominion, once unstoppable, was faltering. Yet the cost was staggering. Entire sectors burned, and countless lives were lost. Still, wherever humanity fought, the tide shifted. The weakest race had become the most dangerous. The Council convened again, this time in desperation. Their fleets were exhausted, morale shattered. Prideful empires who once sneered at humanity now whispered of them as the last hope. Assign them command, one delegate hissed. They are reckless. They waste lives. They win, another replied simply. In the end, necessity silenced pride. The Council entrusted the upcoming assault on the Dominion capital to a coalition fleet, but placed humanity in charge of the vanguard. Admiral Jonathan Hale, a man forged by the Belt Wars, stood before the assembled crews. His voice carried across human and alien alike. The Dominion believes we are weak. They believe fear will break us. They are wrong. We are the fire that endures after the storm. And today, we bring that fire to their home. The fleet jumped into Dominion space. What awaited was hell. The Dominion capital system bristled with defenses, minefields, orbital cannons, fleets layered like armor. By every calculation, the coalition should have been annihilated. But humans had long since stopped fighting by calculations. Admiral Hale's orders stunned his allies. Instead of a cautious advance, human ships surged forward in reckless waves. Frigates dove headlong into enemy fire, not to survive, but to punch holes in the Dominion lines. Damaged cruisers became ramming weapons, plowing into battleships with explosions that tore gaps in the defenses. Alien captains stared in disbelief as humans turned their losses into weapons. They don't retreat, a Revan commander muttered, almost in awe. They become the spay. The coalition followed. Inspired by humanity's audacity, species that had once surrendered without a fight now pressed forward, driven by the unyielding example of their unlikely leaders. The Dominion fleet fractured under the chaos. Their doctrine, built on superiority and intimidation, faltered against opponents who refused to be intimidated, and who turned desperation into strategy. At the height of the battle, the human flagship Resolute was crippled, engines aflame. Admiral Hale gave the final order, lock course on their command station. All hands evacuate. I'll take her in. The crew protested, but his tone brooked no argument. Escape pods launched as the Resolute, broken, burning, drove straight into the Dominion command hub. The explosion lit the system like a false dawn. The Dominion's coordination collapsed. Their fleet scattered. For the first time in centuries, the warlords tasted true defeat. When the smoke cleared, the coalition stood victorious. But victory had a cost. Thousands of human lives burned in the stars, sacrificed willingly to break the enemy. Back in the council chambers, silence reigned as the outcome was declared. Humanity, once ranked beneath grazing beasts, had led the final blow. The High Arbiter spoke, voice low, almost reverent. We judged them weak. We were wrong. Humanity is not weak. Humanity is dangerous. Across the galaxy, the story spread, of miners who defied armies, of pilots who rammed battleships, of soldiers who fought with laughter in their throats. The weakest race had become the nightmare of empires. Ambassador Reyes, weary but unbowed, addressed the council one final time. You measured us by strength of bone, by lifespan, by technology. But true strength is not in the body. It is in the will. Humanity's will cannot be broken. And now you know the price of underestimating it. The council granted Earth full membership and a permanent seat at the table. But beneath the applause was unease. The galaxy had been saved by humanity. But what would happen when the fire they unleashed burned beyond the Dominion? In the end, the verdict was rewritten. Humans were no longer the weakest. They were the most fearsome. And in the quiet corners of space, as civilizations rebuilt, one phrase echoed across every frontier. Beware the fireborn.